Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Honestly, the last 2 years covering this administration has felt almost like a reality show, or maybe like a reality show sitcom, kind of like The Office. Just a bunch of misfit characters, a bunch of typecast comedic characters, almost like token characters, almost like The Office in a certain way. And it feels as if they're trying to outcompete each other into who can be the biggest disaster, who can be the biggest clown, the biggest joke. At first it was Kamala Harris, bar none, not even an argument. She started off as the biggest disaster in the Biden administration, but as time went on, it seems she's adopted a new strategy of not existing, just hiding away in her office, pretending to do work, keeping her nose in her book and pretending to write stuff, but really she's just scribbling. And so the attention has moved away from Kamala Harris, and ever since Karine Jean-Pierre came in, let's be honest, she's been the butt of every joke. If you thought Jen Psaki was bad, Karine Jean-Pierre makes Jen Psaki look like frickin' Kayleigh McEnany. But of course, that can't be allowed. Karine Jean-Pierre can't hog all the spotlight. It's the frickin' circus. And every clown wants to be the butt of the joke, wants to have their moment to shine. And that clown right now seems to be Pete Buttigieg. Holy moly, this guy needs to resign. There are now calls for him to, of course, do exactly that, resign. If there was ever a face to represent the word incompetence, well, that face would be this one. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so like I always say, there's no excuse for these Biden goons. There's an excuse for Sleepy Joe. The man's old. He's almost an octogenarian. He's about to be 80 years old, and so, he's got an excuse. He can barely walk, he shuffles around, his brain doesn't work, he can't speak English, he can't remember people's names, he can't remember basic concepts, he just defaults to the same stories over and over again. He's got an excuse. His cognitive function is no longer there. Karine Jean-Pierre, Kamala Harris, and Pete Buttigieg have no excuse. They're simply incompetent. It's not dementia, it's incompetence. Joe Biden, when he was younger, he was actually a pretty sharp guy. And in a way, that's what carried his political brand. The old Joe Biden is kind of who people were voting for, especially all of the older style Democrats and independents who grew up with Joe Biden as a politician even before the Obama days. They remembered him within a certain light. He at least had something going. This Pete Buttigieg guy, I seriously don't see it. Initially as his political career started, it almost feels like he came out of nowhere. Again, he's just a typecast. He's a token character that the Democrats just forced onto the debate stage. During the Democrat primary in 2020, he didn't earn his spot. He was casted in his spot as the future of the Democrat Party. When Kamala Harris's political stock goes down, it seems like Pete Buttigieg's political stock goes up. Well, if Kamala Harris is a disaster and unelectable, well then at least we have Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana. They constantly say that. South Bend, Indiana. He did such a stellar job in South Bend, Indiana. They keep saying that, but it's such an empty piece of political rhetoric. What exactly is this guy's track record? I don't know. They just keep saying how good he is and how much he's done, except I don't see any tangible evidence, any real evidence of competence from this guy. And I'm pretty sure the DNC had some real high hopes for him as transportation secretary, but absolutely everything since this guy has taken over has been a complete and utter disaster. And right now with the chemical spill with the crisis in East Palestine, Ohio, we're truly seeing Pete Buttigieg's incompetence in his role as transportation secretary. I think nearly 10 days went by where Pete Buttigieg didn't even address the crisis to begin with. For Pete's sakes, pun not intended, he's the transportation czar, the transportation secretary, and he spent the first couple days laughing about spy balloons.
It's had its challenges.
Right.
If you look at what the American transportation systems have faced in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because of the pandemic, we've faced issues from container shipping to airline cancellations. Mm-hmm. Now we got balloons.
That's right.
Rather than publicly addressing a major crisis, contaminating an entire community's water supply and air quality. Then after the uproar started, what did Pete Buttigieg do? He got defensive. It wasn't his fault. No, of course not. It's just a regular occurrence. Don't you know that over 1,000 trail derailments happen every single year?
Look, rail safety is something that has evolved a lot over the years, but there's clearly more that needs to be done because while this horrible situation has gotten a particularly high amount of attention, there are roughly 1,000 cases a year of a train derailing.
Downplaying the crisis, then once he took heat for that, well, actually, it was Donald Trump's fault. Pete Buttigieg writes on Twitter, in the wake of the East Palestine derailment and its impact on hundreds of residents, we're seeing lots of newfound or renewed and welcome interest in our work on rail safety. So I wanted to share more about what we've been doing in this area. We're making historic investments on rail safety through funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law, work that accelerates this year and continues in the years to come. For example, we recently proposed a rule that would require a minimum of a 2-person train crew for safety reasons. FRA is currently reviewing the over 10,000 comments that we've received on the rule and is working on a final version of the rule. We're constrained by a law on some areas of rail regulations, like the braking rule withdrawn by the Trump administration in 2018 because of a law that was passed by Congress in 2015. But we are using the powers we do have to keep people safe. Don't you get it, you MAGA idiots? This has nothing to do with Pete Buttigieg's non-existent leadership. It's Donald Trump's fault. It's the Trump administration and their braking rule. Well, not exactly. Pete Buttigieg then gets absolutely BTFO'd by the chair of NTSB, appearing to throw shade on Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, says that the Trump-era brake decision not to blame for the East Palestine toxic train wreck. This guy is a frickin' clown. All he had to do was address the issue day one, but instead he ignored it. He talked about racism in construction, or I guess diversity, when it comes to the folks wearing the hard hats in African-American communities. How those construction workers shouldn't be white for some reason. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what that even means. He joked about Chinese spy balloons in the sky, downplayed the crisis, then took heat, blamed Donald Trump, then got BTFO'd by one of his own colleagues. And now it seems like even Democrats are going after this clown. Even Ilhan Omar chiming in. East Palestine Railroad derailment will have a significant negative impact on the health and well-being of the residents for decades, and there is almost zero national media attention. We need congressional inquiry and direct action from Pete Buttigieg to address this tragedy. We're seeing call to actions from Democrat politicians, which is essentially an indirect criticism of Pete Buttigieg's inaction. Senator Marco Rubio is now joining chorus demanding Pete Buttigieg resign, and absolutely he should. He has been an utter incompetent disaster since day one in his position. All we've seen from these clowns in the Brandon White House is nothing but inaction and incompetence. Kamala Harris, the border czar, has overseen a humanitarian crisis of epic proportion, and we have seen literally zero action, zero improvement, no solution. Pete Buttigieg took over a Democrat-caused supply chain crisis. He's done very little, if anything, to ameliorate the situation. We have seen dysfunction in the world of transportation for 2+ years straight, whether it's rail or whether it's air travel, shutdowns, strikes. It's been a complete disaster across the board. And now, while dealing with the crisis, we can clearly see that there is a massive void of leadership. We're talking non-existent leadership. That's the problem here. Pete Buttigieg is more focused on his $1 billion investment to build racial equity in America's roads, because of course, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Vox educates us, highways are racist, and we should have less white construction workers, because of course, somehow that's racist too. We know where his focus is. His focus is on a bunch of absolute woke garbage nonsense, and it's no wonder everything around him is crumbling, and when faced with a crisis, he either hides, he downplays, he ignores, he blames Donald Trump, and only seems to activate or mobilize once the political pressure starts to get heavy. It's absolutely unacceptable that the Secretary of Transportation didn't even address the issue until more than a week later. Alejandro Mayorkas, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Karine Jean-Pierre, and of course even Sleepy Joe Biden, all of them should resign. If they had even an ounce of credibility, they would have done it a while ago. That's what I got for you guys though. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.